They found the body at dawn, sprawled across the museum's Egyptian wing with no wounds, no signs of struggle, just perfectly preserved like a mummy that had been waiting 3 millennia for this exact moment. But here's what made Detective Sarah Chen's blood run cold. Clutched in the victim's hand was a golden ankh that matched nothing in their collection, and carved into his palm was a symbol that shouldn't exist outside ancient tombs sealed centuries ago. The museum's lead Egyptologist took one look and fainted. When she came to, she whispered 4 words that would unravel everything. The jackal has returned, Marcus. Webb had always known his family was strange. While other kids learned nursery rhymes, his grandmother taught him to read hieroglyphics. While others celebrated Christmas, his family observed rituals on dates that aligned with stars nobody else watched. But it wasn't until his 25th birthday, standing in his grandmother's study as she lay dying, that she pressed a scarab pendant into his palm and said, "You are the last of the schedule line. When they come for the artifact, you must decide whether to honor our oath or save yourself." Then she closed her eyes and turned to dust, not metaphorically, actually disintegrated into sand that smelled of myrrh and old tombs. Now Marcus sits in an interrogation room because the police found his fingerprints at the museum. They found something else too. Security footage showing him walking through walls like smoke, his shadow stretching behind him in the shape of something with a jackal's head. The detective slides a photo across the table. "Want to explain this?" Marcus stares at his own face in the image, except his eyes are glowing gold, and he has absolutely no memory of being there. Where are you watching this from? Drop a comment below, because what happens next involves a 3,000-year-old conspiracy that spans continents. And I want to know who's brave enough to follow this mystery to its terrifying conclusion. Marcus had exactly 48 hours before the police would formally charge him with murder, and he spent the first 12 breaking into his grandmother's house to find answers. The place looked normal to anyone else. Victorian furniture, Egyptian artifacts on shelves, the lingering scent of jasmine tea. But Marcus now saw what he'd been trained to miss his entire life. The decorative hieroglyphics on the walls weren't decorations at all. They were wards, protection spells, warnings written in a language older than the pyramids. The basement was locked with 7 different mechanisms, each requiring a phrase in ancient Egyptian that his grandmother had made him memorize as bedtime stories. When the final lock clicked open, Marcus descended into a chamber that shouldn't exist beneath a Philadelphia townhouse. Papyrus scrolls lined the walls, some so ancient they crumbled at his breath. Clay tablets covered in cuneiform sat beside leather-bound journals, written in his grandmother's precise handwriting. But the centerpiece was an obsidian statue of Anubis, life-sized, with real gold inlay and eyes made of gems that seemed to track his movement. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice made Marcus spin around, heart hammering. A woman stood on the stairs, maybe 30, with dark skin and eyes lined in kohl like an ancient Egyptian painting. She wore modern clothes, but moved with an otherworldly grace. "Your grandmother spent her whole life keeping you away from this. Truth, who are you?" Marcus demanded, though part of him already knew the answer from the way shadows pooled around her feet like obedient pets. "I'm Nayla, and I was your grandmother. His apprentice before she decided the bloodline should end with her. She moved down the steps, each footfall silent. But the gods have other plans." Marcus Webb, that man at the museum, he wasn't murdered. He was judged, weighed, and found wanting, just like they all are when the scales tip and Anubis walks the earth again. And right now, judging by the mark on your palm that you've been scratching all day, the god of death is waking up inside you. Marcus looked down at his hand where his grandmother had pressed the scarab. The skin was now covered in spreading black lines that looked like cracks in pottery, and beneath them, something golden pulsed with its own heartbeat. Nayla's expression shifted from wariness to resignation. 3,000 years ago, your ancestor made a deal with Anubis. In exchange for the power to guard the gates between life and death, the Shedu bloodline would serve as the god's vessel when humanity needed judgment. Every generation, one descendant carries the potential. Your grandmother ran from this destiny her entire life, tried to end the line by never teaching you the truth. But destiny doesn't care about our wishes. She gestured to the statue behind him. That body at the museum belonged to a man who was trafficking stolen souls. Literal souls, ripped from dying people and sold to the highest bidder for immortality rituals. Anubis sensed the imbalance and rose through the nearest vessel. "Through me," Marcus whispered, the implications crashing over him like a wave. "I killed him and don't even remember." "The god remembers. That's what matters." Nayla moved closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "But here's the real problem. The people trafficking souls. They're part of an organization called the Eternal Covenant. They've been operating since the fall of Rome, collecting artifacts of power, performing forbidden rituals. And they know about you now. They know the Guardian has awakened. The lights in the basement flickered, and Marcus felt something stir in his chest, something ancient and patient and absolutely terrifying. When he looked up at Nayla, he knew his eyes were glowing gold again because she took an involuntary step back. "Then let them come," he heard himself say in a voice that harmonized with his own, older and infinitely colder. "I've been sleeping for 3,000 years, and there is much judgment to dispense. The Eternal Covenant sent their representative at midnight, which Marcus would have found dramatically predictable if he wasn't too busy trying to suppress a god who kept trying to judge every person he saw. Nayla had given him a copper bracelet inscribed with binding symbols that helped, but it felt like trying to hold back the ocean with a paper dam. The representative arrived not through the door, but through the mirror in his grandmother's study, stepping out of the glass like it was water. Marcus Webb, the man, was unremarkably handsome with the kind of face you'd forget instantly, which probably made him perfect for an ancient criminal organization. "My name is irrelevant, but my offer isn't. We know what you're becoming, and we know you can't control it. In 3 days, Anubis will fully awaken, and you'll cease to exist as anything but a puppet for divine judgment, unless you let us help you." "Help me by trafficking souls?" Marcus shot back, though his voice wavered. The truth was, he could feel it, the god's consciousness growing stronger with each passing hour, his own thoughts becoming harder to distinguish from ancient memories of weighing hearts and ferrying the dead. The representative smiled, thin and knowing. "We preserve consciousness beyond death. Is that so different from what every religion promises? Heaven, paradise, eternal life? We simply make it real, for those who can afford it." He pulled out a small clay tablet, covered in cuneiform. "This is a binding contract, 4,000 years old. It can separate you from Anubis permanently, let you live a normal life while we handle the god." "Handle how?" Nayla interjected, appearing from the shadows where she'd been watching. "By imprisoning him, by using his power for your client's immortality schemes, by maintaining balance," the representative corrected smoothly. "The world has changed since the age of pharaohs. We don't need divine judgment anymore. We have laws, courts, civilization. Anubis is an anachronism, and keeping him active only creates chaos." Marcus would be doing the world a service. For a moment, Marcus was tempted. The thought of being free, of not feeling this vast, inhuman consciousness slowly consuming his identity, was almost overwhelming. But then he remembered his grandmother turning to dust, remembered her final words about honoring their oath. "What happens to all those souls you've collected if Anubis is bound?" The representative's smile faded. "That's not your concern." "Answer him," Nayla demanded, and shadows writhed at her feet like snakes. "They remain with us. Eternal life for our clients, eternal service for the souls that power the rituals. A fair exchange." The man's pleasant mask slipped entirely, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. "But truly, Marcus, you have until dawn to decide. After that, we stop asking nicely, and the Covenant has resources you can't imagine. Think carefully about which side of history you want to be on." He stepped back through the mirror and vanished, leaving Marcus and Nayla alone with a choice that would determine not just his fate, but the fate of thousands of trapped souls screaming silently in the darkness. Marcus spent the next day learning what it meant to be a God's vessel from someone who actually understood the process. Nayla took him to places that existed in the cracks between the modern world and the ancient one. A bodega in South Philly where the owner was a priest of Thoth who'd been alive for 600 years. A subway station that didn't appear on any map where spirits of the dead waited for passage. A rooftop garden where plants grew that had been extinct since the Bronze Age collapse. Your grandmother was the guardian before you, Nayla explained, as they walked through an alley that somehow led to a temple hidden beneath the city. But she refused to let Anubis fully manifest. She spent 70 years fighting him, keeping him dormant, hoping the bloodline would end with her. It nearly drove her mad. Why didn't she just use that tablet, separate herself from the god? Marcus asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. Because she was honorable, even in her rebellion. She knew that binding Anubis would upset the cosmic balance, would leave souls vulnerable to predators like the Covenant. So she suffered alone for decades. Nayla's voice carried deep respect. When I became her student, I begged her to let me help carry the burden. She refused, said the curse of the schedule line shouldn't spread to anyone else. They emerged into a vast underground chamber lit by oil lamps that burned with blue flame. Hieroglyphics covered every surface, telling the story Marcus had never fully understood. He saw it now. His ancestor, a priest named Kayamwaset, standing before Anubis during a time when chaos threatened to consume Egypt. The god had offered power in exchange for service, a bloodline that would serve as his hands in the mortal world when judgment was needed. The thing your grandmother never told you, Nayla continued, is that you have a choice in how you share your existence with Anubis. You can fight him like she did, maintain your identity, but live in constant conflict. You can surrender like the Covenant wants and bind him away, living free but abandoning your purpose. Or you can accept partnership, which means letting go of some control but also keeping your essential self intact. Partnership with a god of death? Marcus laughed bitterly. That's not ominous at all. Anubis isn't evil, Marcus. He's necessary. Someone has to guard the transition between life and death, has to ensure souls aren't exploited or trapped. The Covenant has been preying on the dying for centuries because there's been no guardian strong enough to stop them. Your grandmother tried in her limited way, but she was too busy fighting herself to fight them. Effectively, Marcus approached the wall, running his fingers over the hieroglyphics that told his family's story. He could feel Anubis stirring in his chest, and for the first time, he didn't try to suppress it. Instead, he listened. What he heard wasn't the cold, inhuman voice he expected, but something more nuanced. Grief at being dormant while souls suffered, frustration at generations of reluctant hosts, but also a strange sort of respect for his grandmother's stubborn resistance. If I do this, Marcus said slowly, if I accept partnership, what happens to me? Do I become something else? Nayla smiled, sad but genuine. You become what you were always meant to be, a bridge between worlds, a guardian of souls, the hand of divine justice in a world that desperately needs it. You'll still be Marcus Webb, but you'll also be more. And yes, it's terrifying, but isn't that better than being nothing at all? The Covenant's response to Marcus's decision came at dawn, exactly as threatened, and it wasn't subtle. They attacked the temple with forces that shouldn't exist. Mummies animated by stolen life force, spirits bound into servitude, and mercenaries wearing amulets that let them see and harm things that existed between life and death. Nayla fought beside Marcus, her shadow magic creating barriers and weapons, but they were vastly outnumbered. We need to fall back, she shouted over the chaos of combat. A mummy's fist shattered the stone where Marcus's head had been a moment before. Get to the inner sanctum, where the wards are strongest, but Marcus felt something else rising inside him. And this time, he didn't fight it. He let the boundaries between himself and Anubis blur, felt his consciousness expand to include 3,000 years of memory and purpose. When he opened his eyes, they blazed with golden light that made the Covenant's forces hesitate. "No more running," he said in that harmonized voice that was both his and ancient. "This ends now. What happened next would later be described by survivors as simultaneously beautiful and terrifying." Marcus raised his hand, and the very fabric of reality seemed to bend around him. Every person in that chamber who had ever stolen a soul, who had trafficked in death and immortality, found themselves suddenly standing before the scales of judgment. Not physically, but spiritually, their consciousness yanked from their bodies to face the weighing of their hearts. The ancient ritual played out in seconds that felt like eternity. Hearts placed on one side of the scales, the feather of Mayat on the other. And one by one, those hearts proved heavier than the feather, weighted down by greed, by cruelty, by the suffering they'd caused. Marcus felt Anubis's judgment flowing through him, not cruel but absolutely impartial. These people had violated the sacred boundary between life and death, had turned souls into commodities. The price for that violation was steep. When it was over, 17 people lay on the temple floor, their souls claimed by Anubis for judgment in the true afterlife. Their bodies remained alive but empty, shells that would need to learn to be human again from the beginning. Nayla stared at Marcus with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "You just rewrote 17 souls. That's power that hasn't been used since the age of pharaohs." Marcus swayed, feeling Anubis recede back to their shared space, leaving him in control again, but changed. They made their choices. "I just enforced the consequences." He looked at his hands, no longer quite sure where he ended and the god began. "The Covenant needs to know that the Guardian is active again, that souls are protected, that judgment is real. They'll know," Nayla assured him. "The question is, what do we do now? You've declared war on an organization that's been accumulating power for 2,000 years. Marcus thought of his grandmother, fighting alone for 70 years. Thought of the thousands of souls trapped in the Covenant's collection, screaming silently for release. Thought of the responsibility that came with being the hand of a god. Now we start freeing souls and reminding the world that some boundaries are sacred. And if the Covenant wants to stop us, they're welcome to come stand before the scales and see how their hearts measure up." The real war began 3 weeks later when Marcus discovered exactly how deep the Covenant's influence ran. They weren't just a criminal organization. They had members in governments, corporations, religious institutions, people who had achieved immortality through stolen souls and now controlled vast swaths of human civilization from the shadows. Nayla helped him track down their facilities, places hidden by magic and money, where souls were stored in crystalline matrices, powering rituals that kept the wealthy and powerful alive long past their natural spans. The first facility they raided was beneath a pharmaceutical company in Boston. Marcus walked through security like they couldn't see him, the god's power making him nearly invisible to mortal eyes. What he found made him physically sick. Thousands of souls trapped in a vast array. Their suffering used to generate the life force that the Covenant's clients consumed. Many of the souls were ancient, stolen from people who died centuries ago and never found their way to proper afterlife. "Can you free them?" Nayla asked, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. Marcus approached the array, feeling Anubis surge forward with recognition. This was exactly the kind of violation they existed to prevent. He placed his hands on the central crystal and felt the god's power flow through him like a river breaking through a dam. The array shattered in a cascade of light, and suddenly the chamber was filled with translucent forms, souls blinking in confusion and wonder as they found themselves unbound for the first time in decades or centuries. "Go," Marcus commanded, and his voice carried the weight of divine authority. "Find your way to the judgment you were denied. The path is open. Anubis will ensure safe passage." The souls streamed away, following invisible roads that led beyond the mortal world. Marcus felt each one pass through him, felt their gratitude and relief, and also felt Anubis's grim satisfaction at fulfilling the purpose for which he'd been worshipped. But as the last soul departed, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. "They know we're here," Naylor said, already preparing her shadow magic for a fight. "And they won't let us leave easily." What emerged from the facility's depths was something Marcus hadn't expected. Another vessel, a woman whose eyes glowed with the sickly green light of stolen divinity. "You think you're the only one who can host a god?" she hissed. "The Covenant has been collecting divine fragments for centuries. I carry a piece of Apophis, the serpent of chaos. Let's see which is stronger. Judgment or entropy." The battle that followed shook the building to its foundations and would have killed everyone inside if Naylor hadn't evacuated the mortal workers first. Two gods fought through their human vessels, divine power colliding in ways that bent physics and reason. Marcus felt himself slipping away, felt Anubis taking more control than ever before, and for a moment feared he would lose himself entirely. But then he remembered Naylor's words about partnership, about maintaining his essential self even while sharing existence with something vast and ancient. "We are Marcus Webb," he declared, forcing his identity to the forefront even as Anubis's power surged through him. "And we are Anubis, guardian of souls. We are both, and that makes us stronger than either alone." The dual assertion seemed to unlock something, a perfect synthesis of mortal will and divine power. The next strike he landed didn't just defeat the Apophis vessel. It shattered the stolen divinity inside her, freeing whatever fragment of the chaos serpent had been bound and sending it back to whatever cosmic prison it had escaped from. The woman collapsed, alive but freed from the parasitic god that had been consuming her. Marcus stood over her, breathing hard, feeling the battle's toll in every cell of his body. "Tell the Covenant," he said quietly, "that the age of stealing souls is over. Every facility, every collection, every trapped spirit, we're going to find them all and free them. And anyone who stands in our way will face judgment." That's not a threat. It's a promise from the god of death himself. The woman looked up at him with eyes that were finally her own again. And what Marcus saw there was terror, mixed with something that might have been relief. The final confrontation came exactly where Marcus knew it would. Egypt, at the original temple of Anubis, buried beneath the sands near Abydos. The Covenant had been leading him here all along, letting him destroy their facilities and free their captured souls, because they needed him in this specific place at this specific time. Naylor realized the trap as they descended into the temple complex, but by then it was too late to turn back. "They're going to try to bind you permanently," she warned as they moved through corridors covered in hieroglyphics that seemed to writhe in the torchlight. "This is where your ancestor Wasit first made the pact with Anubis. It's a place of power, which means it's also a place of vulnerability." Marcus felt the truth of her words. Here, where the boundary between mortal and divine had first been crossed, that boundary could potentially be sealed forever. The Covenant had gathered their full strength in the temple's heart. Dozens of their immortal members, artifacts of power from a dozen dead civilizations, and at the center of it all, a ritual circle that pulsed with containment magic. They were ready to trap a god. Marcus Webb, the Covenant's leader, spoke, an ancient man whose true age was impossible to guess. "You've caused us significant inconvenience, freed thousands of souls we'd collected over centuries, disrupted our operations worldwide, destroyed several irreplaceable artifacts. But you've also done us a favor by bringing Anubis to the one place where we can finally imprison him permanently, ending the threat of divine judgment forever." "You think you can cage death?" Marcus asked, feeling Anubis's amusement mixed with his own defiance. "Even if you bind me, even if you seal the god away, death doesn't stop. Judgment doesn't end." "No," the leader agreed. "But without an active guardian, we can operate freely. Souls will be vulnerable again. The natural order will be ours to manipulate." He gestured, and the ritual circle flared to life. "Your grandmother delayed this moment for 70 years. You've delayed it for mere weeks, but all delays end eventually." The ritual began, and Marcus felt divine power being pulled from him like threads being yanked from fabric. Anubis roared inside his consciousness, fighting the binding. But the Covenant had prepared too well. Ancient magic designed specifically to contain gods, wrapped around them like chains. Marcus fell to his knees, feeling himself and the god being pulled apart. The synthesis they'd achieved beginning to fragment. But then Nayla did something unexpected. She stepped into the ritual circle beside Marcus and placed her hand on his shoulder. "The Shedu bloodline isn't the only legacy in this room," she said quietly. "My family has served the Guardians for 3,000 years. We were meant to share the burden, but your grandmother refused." "I'm not refusing, Nayla." "No," Marcus tried to protest. But she was already speaking words in ancient Egyptian, words of binding and partnership and shared purpose. He felt her consciousness join his and Anubis's, a third thread weaving into their synthesis. The Covenant's ritual shattered under the sudden shift in dynamics, unable to contain what was no longer a simple god-vessel relationship, but something more complex. Marcus stood, pulling Nayla up with him, and they faced the Covenant together. "You wanted to end divine judgment," Marcus said, his voice now harmonizing with both Anubis and Nayla. "But judgment isn't just a god's prerogative. It's a human one too. We judge ourselves every day through our choices. And every person in this room has chosen repeatedly to violate the sanctity of death for personal gain. So here's our judgment. You wanted immortality. You can have it. You'll live forever with the weight of every soul you've stolen, every life you've corrupted, every boundary you've crossed. You'll carry that weight until you're ready to face the scales honestly. That is the curse of the Shedu line, and we invoke it now, the temple filled with golden light. And when it faded, the Covenant's members remained standing but changed. Marcus could see it in their eyes, sudden, crushing awareness of everything they'd done, every consequence of their actions, every moment of suffering they'd caused. Some collapsed immediately, broken by the weight of their own guilt. Others fled, unable to bear being in the presence of true judgment. The leader simply stood there, tears streaming down his ancient face, finally feeling the full measure of his 3,000-year existence. "Is it over?" Nayla asked, swaying with exhaustion from the ritual they'd just performed. Marcus felt Anubis settle into a new equilibrium, sharing space not just with him, but with Nayla too. A triumvirate of mortal, and divine. The war with the Covenant, yes. But there will be others who try to exploit death, who try to traffic in souls. There always are. That's why Guardians exist, why we exist. They walked out of the temple together as dawn broke over the Egyptian desert, casting long shadows that sometimes looked like jackals and sometimes looked like humans and sometimes looked like both at once. Marcus thought of his grandmother, wondered if she was watching from whatever afterlife awaited those who served death faithfully, if she approved of the choice he'd made to accept partnership rather than fight alone. "What now?" Nayla asked as they emerged into the sunlight. Marcus smiled, feeling more whole than he'd ever felt in his merely human life. "Now we do what we were always meant to do. We guard the boundary between life and death. We protect souls from those who would exploit them. We ensure that when people face judgment, it's fair and true. And we remember that some secrets aren't meant to be hidden forever. Some legacies are meant to be embraced." Somewhere in the city above the temple, Detective Sarah Chen was closing the file on a murder that never made sense, that involved a victim with no wounds and a suspect who walked through walls. She'd never know the real story, never understand that what looked like murder was actually divine, judgment rendered after 3,000 years of waiting. But in the shadows of every city, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, there were now guardians watching, ensuring that death remained sacred and souls remained free. And if you looked closely at those shadows, if you caught them at just the right angle, you might see them take the shape of a jackal's head, patient and eternal, waiting to weigh the hearts of those who would dare disturb the ancient balance. The last descendant of Anubis had finally accepted his birthright, and the 3,000-year secret was a secret no more.